I kept hearing him on the radio, and I was shocked by the fact that how could people even believe such a thing is real? And I would shut the radio off, and I would hear him a few weeks later, and what I was hearing was illogical. It was stupid. It felt like the Jerky Boys to me. If you remember the old guys who would do
I
those,
love the Jerky Boys.
yeah,
Prank calls.
But I always say, how could people be so stupid as to think these guys are legitimate? And that's kind of the feeling I had. And finally, this particular case, the John Smith case, there were no necessarily leads that were missed. The investigators didn't necessarily drop the ball. Cases are cold for a reason sometimes because they've run everything to ground. So I thought to myself, well, I want to contact this guy. And it was a particular morning. And I went to either prove to myself that he was a con, or worst case, he wasn't, and he could be of some kind of benefit. So that was the premise by which I went to see him.
And so tell me, how do you prepare to go see John?
So his assistant called me the following week, I believe it was, and said, can you come tomorrow? And
So the assistant gets a call from the FBI or from the New York cop?
from me, I called the assistant, and I just said, my name is Bob. I work for the FBI in New York. I heard this guy on the radio. He claims he could connect to people on the other side. Well, I've got a case. I'm looking for a missing person. I want to put him on the phone with the family members. He can do his thing, and maybe he can help me. That was all they knew. And I could hear some hesitation in his assistant's voice at the time. And she said, well, he doesn't really do this, but I'll talk to him. And it was about a week, maybe 2 weeks later, she calls me and said, hey, John says, can you come tomorrow?
So before that, you get a call. Your assistant comes to you, John, and says there's a FBI. Because I asked you, I said, do you do this? You said, I don't do this. Why did you take this call?
There was an urgency in how the message was delivered to me. So I don't know. I feel like there was this sense of duty. I don't know. I had this, I guess, I mean, we talk about it in the book as we go through to the end of the story of like maybe early on, what was the trigger for me to do this? And I think it has to do with my dad being a New York City cop. And
yeah, I learned that too. Your dad is a New York City cop. Your name, John Edward, is just your first and second name because he doesn't even want you to use his name. He doesn't want to sully the family name
correct.
with this silliness of being a psychic.
So before I officially became John Edward, the only time that I was ever called John Edward was from my mother when I was in trouble. So I kind of felt like, well, if I'm going to be doing this publicly and professionally, I'm going to be, called out for things. I'm used to hearing that, so it should be fine. And plus, it kept the name in my vibration. I mean, now it's officially my name, but yeah, my dad didn't want me using his name. Do not sully your name, and don't let me find out that
What is your real last name?
McGee.
McGee. So right now, Mr. McGee, and I believe it, is listening and watching and is very proud.
Yeah,
and
because he's now in a realm where I can communicate with him.
You can communicate.
Right.
And are you saying I told you so?
No, actually, I think the I told you so's are never useful when it comes to people who have passed. I think the I told you so's are much more useful when it comes to the mirror, because the self-acceptance and understanding of something that we've accomplished or done, we can be the only person to applaud our actions. We shouldn't be looking to externalize our grief. We shouldn't be looking to externalize our accolades. And I think for me, working with Bob, the journey for me in Chasing Evil was recognizing, number one, that I didn't know that I was on some level seeking patriarchal acceptance, that I didn't know I needed it, because to me, I did the work. I did the work on understanding my upbringing. I knew that he had an issue with an alcohol problem. I knew what the issues were with my parents. I was able to see very clearly that there was a codependence there. And I went no contact when I got older after my mom died. I was like, nope, this is not healthy for me. I did the work. I created the boundaries. I understood the energy. I knew the astrology of it. Like, I was good. And then the universe went, are you though? Are you really good? Okay, so we're going to send in this guy. And
who also has a very similar upbringing and a very similar relationship with his father. You learn in the book, because this is not only a book of cases and death and evil, and you will just be blown away. And this is what I loved about the book. I end up loving you guys, and I end up saying, I was just asking your manager there, like, you guys, it's a movie. They should get the movie rights, because you're an unlikely pair, but you are very, very similar. And the way you came at it, it's an amazing story.
But we didn't know any of that in the beginning. that was the transformation in the journey. Like, he approached me like any other case, and I approached him like every other reading.
Had you never gotten cops calling you before?
Not like directly. Like, I had one case where I did a reading for a family, and there was a homicide in Florida, and I gave information to the family, and the mom of one of the victims said, "That's not true. That's not true." And I'm like, "Ma'am, I can only tell you what I'm being shown." She goes, "Well, I'm going to go tell the investigators on the case." I said, "Okay." And the next morning, the investigators called me and they said, only somebody at the crime scene would know what you told them, and that information has not been revealed to the family or the press because it's an active investigation. So they flew up to New York to actually talk to me. So that was one example. There were a couple of other sporadic moments where stuff like this happened, but we're talking like 0.5% of 100 of where my attention was focused. I legitimately didn't want to ever have to deal with my father saying, you know, "I told you not to do that. You have a respect for the uniform." And he wore a double uniform. He was a police officer. He was a military guy. You know, that was the place that he came from.
And he made fun of psychics. He said that the body's always near the water. The body's always near a tree. The earth is 90% water. So,
yeah,
you know, but so, okay, he calls you. What do you do? So you say, okay, he shows up. And what did you do, Bob?
So I was told to bring some belongings or artifacts related to the victim we were looking for. Her name, the Jersey victim, her name was Fran, Betty Fran. So I contacted the detective. He brought, I think there were 5 objects, but I think we met at about 3:30. I know it was 3:30.
Of course you do.
And that morning,
why?
That I just remember. And anyway, that morning,
just the facts.
That morning, I went around my office to 4 different women, and I would say, "Hey, let me borrow your necklace. Let me borrow." And we would call them control items, and put them in the mix with these belongings. And so I went to his office. I vividly remember it. It looked like a doctor's office. It had like a waiting room, and his assistant said, "John is finishing up with some clients in the back." And I remember the door opening, and I saw this young white couple with a girl I assume was their daughter, and all 3 of them had been crying. And out behind them walks this little guy that reminded me of Harry Potter at the time.
Okay, wait, can we just say, when we talk about little guy, can we just give context? For the people listening or watching, he's 6'8". This guy's 6'8".
But I do see the Harry Potter reference.
Yeah. So
if you saw the glasses, you would see that too.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, it further entrenched my position that, man, this guy's exploiting grief of these family members. And I remember vividly that this SOB, right? And he invites us in, and he explains what he does, and he says, "In a minute here when I get started."
You're with another cop?
A detective from Jersey.
Okay.
Right. So
who does believe?
He was all in. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And just to add in, the reason why I would ask for stuff is when I would sit with a client, you know, one-on-one in person, I would do something called psychometry. And psychometry is where you hold on to an object of a person, and you could read either the energy of the object, which is objective psychometry, or you could do subjective psychometry, where you would connect with the energy of the person. So I would always tell clients, and I still say it to this day, never give a medium an artifact or an item of someone who's passed, like a photo or jewelry, because you can actually pick up vibrations and energy about the person, and it can sound like you're actually making a connection when you're not. You're just basically reading the energy of that. So I wanted to not make a connection with the person who had passed. I wanted to make a connection with the energy of the story that he was bringing to me, and that's why I wanted the objects. So psychometry would help me do that, tune into her.
So you have placebo little things that
control items, right?
Control items.
Right.
Things that aren't real.
Right, but
to prove to you.
Well, in my mind, if he started picking up one of these control items and started claiming he was connecting to this victim, I know he's
bullshit.
100%, right? So to me, it made logical sense. So we put these 9 objects in front of him on this desk, and if I put them before you now, you would not be able to distinguish any of the 4 or 5 as different than the others. And I vividly remember him going back and forth with his eyes, and taking like a deep breath and really focusing, and he kind of put his palms facing together, and one at a time he started pulling objects out, and he put his hands over them, and he had this, like, he tilted his head, and he said, "I don't know what these things are," and he pushed them aside. He says, "But they have nothing to do with why you're here." And those were the items that were not relevant to the case. So now when
Did
you
your
think
heart stop?
Well, certainly he had my attention, right? I mean, what are the statistical probabilities of him, right, doing that? And then he proceeded to pick up a pair of eyeglasses that belonged to our victim. And the information he provided at that moment was so specific, so singular in nature, it could not be denied. He called her by her name. He said she has 2 names. It's like Betty Fran, but she goes by the second. He described physical attributes about her, the fact that she had a metal pin or rod in her hip, which was true, that
Yes.
she had breast implants, different specifics, talked about how many kids she had, where she was from. And finally he says, yeah, she's been killed. And the person responsible is either a husband or a boyfriend. It's a J name. I'm pretty sure it's John. He did not know the case.
And it hadn't been published. It wasn't. It hadn't made the papers. This is all information that you would have.
Moreover, it's a cold case, right? The case is started in 1974. Again, and this is 1998. So this is nowhere to be found. He has no idea. And so now he's giving very specific information about this victim and John.